Welcome everybody. I see a few new faces, mostly familiar faces, and it's a pleasure to have you all. My name's Angelo. You can see it on the screen, and it's my enormous pleasure to introduce Marques Redd. Marcus and I met, I believe, it was in March at the what was it called, Archives to the Impossible conference, and we were one of like maybe three of maybe 200 participants that were African American. We're on the same panel, sitting next to one another. So it's one of these people. I listened to his bio, and I said, "Damn, what have I been doing all my life?" But anyway, I'm going to tell you a little bit about him if I could find my little cheat sheet, which I'm having trouble finding. Here it is. So he's a traditional African cosmologist, an independent scholar, and multimedia artist. The foundation of his work is a reclamation, modernization, and an extension of traditional African knowledge systems, particularly from ancient Egypt and West Africa. And he seeks every medium he can: film, sculpture, academic scholarship, spiritual retreats, performance, and public installation, to bring the multi-dimensional depths of African cosmologies to the 21st century world. His film, Obi Madu, has been screened in art museums and theaters in a number of venues across the country. And he's launched a public art collaboration entitled Playing the Cosmic Strings. And he's an art curator, and he's organized exhibitions in Cleveland, Columbus, Denver, Tampa, and Miami. He's currently the artist in residence at the Pittsburgh Glass Center, and his collection of glass sculptures will be presented in a solo exhibition later this year. He's going to be opening an art gallery called the Red Studio and publishing his book, Ancient Origins, Future Destinies, Blackness, World Creativity, and the Word. Marcus, welcome to our exploration.
Thank you so much, Angelo. I'm happy to be here, happy to share this time in this space with you all, and happy to share a little bit about ancient Egyptian spirituality. It's a topic that I've been working on, my goodness, at least for about 22 years at this point. So I'm very far and deep into exploration of this tradition, and hope to share some information on how you can activate it in your own personal spiritual practice. Okay, so let's just go ahead and jump right in. Okay, so I'll just share a PowerPoint slide to get us started. Okay, so the topic for today is activating Egyptian spirituality. So I want to do three things. So one, I want to give you all an overview or a bird's eye look at ancient Egyptian cosmology so that you can understand from one angle at least what the purpose of the spiritual system is. And then we're going to jump in and do some collaborative experiential work in the second part with hieroglyphics. And I'll talk through how you can use hieroglyphics as shamanic tools for different kinds of purposes. And then we'll end with the section I call Experiencing One's Immortality, which is a very lofty, very lofty title, but hopefully you will feel the power of that particular part of the talk. Okay, so let's jump in. So the spirit bodies. There are many different ways to understand the human personality. In our contemporary world, most people think of themselves as divided into a mind and body, or maybe a mind, body, and spirit, mind, body, and soul. In the Egyptian context, it was a much more complex endeavor. And the human personality or the human self was thought of as an assemblage of a wide variety of spiritual bodies or entities that exist at multiple levels of manifestation, from the most dense material physical body that we inhabit to ethereal spiritual bodies that are immortal and live forever. And the goal of ancient Egyptian spirituality was to think about how to perfect all of these bodies, how to heal all of these bodies, with the larger idea being that with the proper level of cultivation, the proper level of work, and infusing energy into these bodies, that they could all exist after death. They could continue in pattern and memory in the metaphysical world. So let's jump in. I'll walk you through what the bodies are. and then we'll start to engage and activate them. Okay, so the first body is the one that we're most familiar with, which is the Khat, is the physical body. We know ancient Egypt was very obsessed with cultivating, with preserving the physical body. As we could see on the left, this scene of mummification where the body was dressed with certain kinds of herbs and preparations so that it could continue to live. And of course, now we have mummies that are over 4,000 years old. So the body and the physical body was an important site of spiritual activity, rigorous protocols for diet, exercise, etc., and even for structuring the social world. You could see over on the right an image of the temple at Luxor, where you could see an architectural plan of the temple that's superimposed on a skeleton. So you can even see how the idealized human body becomes the framework and the paradigm for structuring space and the natural world we live in. Okay, and again, feel free to, for this part, to jump in or interrupt me, or if you have any questions, don't hesitate to just shout out your question and come into the conversation. Okay, so we have a second body, a spiritual body that was called the Shahoud, which is an energy body. So in the tableau on the left, you can see these figures, they're absorbing star energy into their third eye. In the image on the right, you can see the sun. Oh, let me go back. You can see the sun, and you can see beams of energy coming down into specific power points in the figure. So this is the body that literally animates us, that gives us the life force, that helps the physical body to be able to be animated and move in the world. There are a lot of exercises that were used to cultivate this. To think about analogs in other traditions, if you're familiar with, let's say, the Indian tradition, you could think about chakras as an energy system located through the body. In the Taoist system, you could think about the microcosmic orbit as a way to think about the energy body. So the Shahoud encapsulates all of those kinds of speculations, is very responsive to light, to star energy, to crystals. And that way it's almost like a plant. It's responsive to sounds, to perfumes, to aromas. Okay, so the next body is called the Ka, which is the emotional body or inner child. And this is the body that appears through which we navigate the dream world. This is the repository of all of our unconscious energies, our fears, our traumas, the things that happen to us, our likes and dislikes, our instincts. You can see this on the left, a zodiac wheel from the Temple of Dendarum that was used to track the moods and the emotions of the inner child. And on the right, we can see an image of the inner child, and in his hands, he has scorpions, snakes, lions, to basically symbolize an inner child that has conquered and tamed these wild animal energies within. Okay, so next we have the Ab, which is the mental body. In our current context, we think about the mind as living in the brain, whereas in the ancient Egyptian context, the mind lived in the heart, and the Ab was the Egyptian word for heart. You can see in the scene on the left, the judgment scene where after death, the heart itself is weighed against the feather of truth. And the heart is where we find the will, how we project our will into the world, the seat of our rationality, of our morality and ethics. And this body was trained in many ways, but one of the ways was through contemplating sacred geometry. And so you can see this flower of life image on the right that was incised in stone in the temple dedicated to Osiris in a city called Abydos. So again, this is how we think, process, and engage with the world. Okay, so now we have the Ujad, the body of imagination. And this is one of the 9 bodies that we will do a deeper dive in today. And we'll kind of work with how to activate it. So in the ancient Egyptian context, anything that could be imagined had a reality. So in our current moment, we think about fiction versus nonfiction, but everything that's imaginable, whether it's Batman, Thor, the Marvel heroes, all of those things, because they're infused with a certain kind of mental energy, have a real existence. So the Ujat was how you tapped into this realm of imagination, into this imaginal world. I mean, this is where the ancestors live. This is the land of the dead. This is where the deities reside. And hieroglyphics were one of the tools used to activate the imagination. One of the, if not the first, complete writing system of humanity, the hieroglyphs were a very important tool for synthesizing the activity of the left and the right brain. So on one hand, you have hieroglyphs that stand for words. So they're activating the linear logical side of the brain, but then they're also pictures. So you're getting an activation of a synthetic, holistic, imaginative understanding of the world. And so being able to imagine was one of humanity's greatest gifts. And so that was thought of as a separate spiritual body. Just a few
Oui,
more.
oui, je suis quelque chose qui est en direct, en fait, aux États-Unis.
Was that a question? Okay, no, okay. So we have the name as a spiritual body. The name was thought of as very sacred. And we could see here, even when names were written in hieroglyphics, they were not just written with other glyphs. I mean, they were always surrounded by this cartouche to set them apart. So the name really embodies in the Egyptian conceptualization the essence of a thing, the spiritual purpose of a thing. So when someone was given a name, it was a very serious matter because the name is what's energized about us more than anything. I mean, people call our names hundreds of times, possibly in the course of the day. So the idea was to be given a name, a spiritual name that would encapsulate your life purpose, your destiny, so that every time you hear it, you're constantly being reminded, okay, this is what I was sent to Earth to do. This is why I'm here. And the name also connects a lot with ancestral work, with the ancestors, with the land of the dead. And if you look at a lot of the Egyptian pyramid texts, for instance, you'll see a lot about preserving the name, taking care of the name, activating the name. So again, one of the bodies that we have to cultivate and send energy into and learn how to up level. Okay, so we also have the Shakum, which is this power body. So the easiest way to explain this one is that we have to remember that the Supreme Being is omnipotent. The Supreme Being is able to create all of the myriad of forms in the world: galaxies, planets, stars, solar systems, animals, plants, bodies, etc. So we have so we have within ourselves a source, a body that taps us into the infinite power of creation that the Creator has. So this body was associated with understanding cycles, because everything in creation has a cycle. It has a birth, a birth, a life, and a death. Everything has a particular space that it occupies that nothing else can occupy. So it's about understanding structure, about understanding cycles, and also about understanding mantras, because the idea is that sound creates and shapes all forms. Okay, so we also have a body of omniscience, our highest intuition within ourselves that understands the answers to all questions. And this particular spiritual body was accessed through oracles, through divination, with the goal of becoming an actual living prophet that is tapped directly into divine knowledge. And the final body of them all is what is called the Ba. And this is our, let's say, immortal spark. This is the part of ourselves that is connected to all other consciousnesses in the world. This is our connection to the world soul. This is our inner peace, our inner androgeneity. This is the core of existence and the core of who we are. Okay, so that was, let's stop the share for a quick minute. Okay, so I know that was a lot. It was a very dense presentation, but I do feel that Egypt had one of the most rigorous spiritual initiation systems, because you're constantly having to learn all of these spiritual bodies, relate to them, heal them. I mean, so we're all these multifaceted, complex cast of characters, even just within our own personal selves. So let me just stop and get your feedback, see if there are any questions or comments before we move to actually jumping in and activating them.
Yeah, I have a general question. What would you? I know it's a big question, but there's a preoccupation with the dead. That's all the icons of. I don't know what's going on here.
Well, I'm hearing a lot of background.
Yeah, so am I. I'll put everybody else on mute, I guess. Or if you, yeah. I don't know who's not on mute. Let's okay. Give me one second to figure out how to do this. Anyhow, did you understand my general question? I think everybody's on mute now, except for.
What was the question?
Well, there's a preoccupation with death in a lot of Egyptian icons, and so I wonder if you could just talk about that briefly.
Well, yes. Well, and actually, I would say it is probably a misconception that it's an obsession with death. I think it's probably the opposite is the truth, where it's an obsession with life and with prolonging life even after what seems to be physical death. There's an idea that death is only one stage in a longer process where we all will transition through it, but it is not the end. It becomes another beginning for life to continue. If you look in the tombs, if you look at the pyramid texts, you can see tons of scenes where people are enjoying some of the things of their daily life, even in the afterworld. People having banquets, going fishing, planting, engaging in agriculture. So death is only one part of the larger cycle. And so I see a question. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So Fabulous asked, how can someone connect with their spiritual name? And also, is there some relation with the common name? And
yes, okay, I see it. It's a great question coming from the Santeria tradition, a tradition that I've also spent a lot of time exploring. I've had the opportunity to go to Cuba and practice with a spiritual family in Matanzas. So yes, so when you receive a life reading from a Babalawo, you receive an Odu, which is one of 256 patterns that are generated from that particular Odu Ifa oracle. And that Odu is the actual spiritual name. I mean, so that whole system, those 256 patterns and that conceptualization are the energetic foundation of all of the material things that we see in the world. So when you know your Odu, when you know your spiritual pattern, that becomes your true name and your true essence. So one of the ways to connect with that particular name is literally just to sit and chant it and sing it. And so even with my Odu, with my spiritual name in that system, every day I chanted at least 3 times just to kind of remind me, okay, my life is part of a larger story. My life is part of a larger cosmic pattern. And kind of taking it back to Angelo's question, the Odu is a pattern. It's a geometrical pattern. And of course, geometrical patterns cannot die. You can't kill a circle, you can't kill a square. So if you are identifying with that pattern, you are literally tapping into and attaching yourself to something that is immortal and that will continue to live even after your physical body is no longer here. So Javier, I hope that answered the question. All right.
I'm gonna
Perfect.
sneak in a
Thank
double.
you. Yeah, I understand. And it's very interesting because there is a deep relation between Egypt religions and Afro-Cuban. It's almost the same. And it's very good to hear because I know about Oduns, etc. And I had that doubt when you said about the spiritual name, and that is very interesting and new for me. Thank you very much, Reed, and good presentation.
Perfect. All right, so now we're going to jump in and we're going to activate and get you in communication with some of these spiritual bodies.
You had one question from
Oh,
Bill
okay.
Kelly.
Perfect.
Okay, yeah, I just had the question of, this system coming from ancient Egypt. Okay, so what happened when Islam became the religion of Egypt? How was this forced underground, or did it have some impact on the forms that Islam took in Egypt? I just was imagining what would have happened. Yeah.
No, that's a great question. So yes, so the spiritual system of Egypt was attacked through many waves of invaders, but even before the Islamic invasion came in, I mean, there were the Greeks, the Romans, the Assyrians, the Persians. So there are many different levels of attack that damaged the system, caused the system to fracture, go underground, to be repressed, but still rearticulated in various senses. So, okay, so I would say there are many answers to that question. So on one hand, Islam, like many of the other Abrahamic traditions, wanted to associate Egypt to a paganism that they were overcoming. So you think about, let's say, even the Judaic prescription against images. I mean, so we have a spiritual body that's about nothing but images. I mean, so we see this sense that there's only one God. I mean, but we see in a profusion of deities and spiritual forms and spiritual figures in the Egyptian context. So I would say Islam was part of a wave of Abrahamic traditions that literally seek, or that sought to divide a line between revealed truth, revealed religion, and pagan error. Even with that said, though, it's complicated because there are esoteric traditions, even within Islam, that still re-articulate some of these motifs, particularly if you look at Sufism, with the chanting of names, even, and the way the name is treated within Sufism, you can see certain kinds of connections. Within Islamic alchemical texts, there are narratives about journeys into the underworld that mirror very closely what you can find in some of the earlier texts. But then also there were migrations out of Egypt as well. Migrations where you had priests leaving and re-articulating the system or variations of the system all over the continent. And there have been people, Mustafa Gadala is one person who's written a lot about this, around how there are these interesting West African connections with ancient Egypt, specifically thinking about the reformation of oracle systems, their connections between the deity systems. For instance, a figure like Tahuti, the deity of wisdom, would be transformed into Orunmila, the god of oracles and wisdom. Connections between, let's say, Het-Heru on the Egyptian side and a figure like Oshun. So I would say there are these connections that still allow the system, or fragments of the system, to still travel into various places and be reconstructed.
Question. In terms of gender roles in those times, what was that like, and how did that impact their spirituality?
Well, that's an interesting question. And I think here we could get, and I think there's still so much to be uncovered and teased out of Egyptian religion, because again, we think about gender in a very flat way. I mean, so we think about gender only on one level, the Khat, the physical body. However, if you have 9 bodies, the question of gender becomes a lot more interesting, fun, and complicated. So I would say at the highest level, as I said, the Ba, because the Ba is the kind of immortal body, that body has no gender. That body is completely androgynous. And I would speculate that the other bodies in between the Ba and the Kat have their own fluctuating relationships to gender energies. I mean, for instance, the inner child, for instance, is a body that shows up in the dream world very strongly. I mean, so your dream body doesn't necessarily have to be the same gender as your physical body. I mean, you can take on almost shamanically different kinds of gender expressions depending on what spiritual body you're trying to tap into at a particular moment. But another way to answer the question, I mean, is to think about politics. I mean, and I would say you definitely saw much more gender equity in the political sphere than you did in many other contexts in the ancient world. Women were able to be, of course, high priestesses, high priests, take on very important leading roles. In cases of figures like Hatshepsut, actually leading the entire nation, able to have a realm of legal rights from being able to own property, initiate divorce, all of those kinds of things. So I would say there is a lot to learn about, one, the complexity of gender, and also how to establish a state that is organized around equitable gender lines.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else before we jump back in? All right, perfect. All right, so here we go. So one of the two bodies we will spend some time with today will be the Ujat, basically understanding how to use hieroglyphs for different kinds of shamanic and spiritual purposes. Okay, so there are hundreds of glyphs. So I wanted for this particular exercise to give you one that I'm sure most people, if not everybody on the call, will be familiar with and will be very easy to use and to activate. And so we will start with this image of the Ankh. You've probably seen it on jewelry or drawn in different places. So this is a symbol that means life. It's an encapsulation of the life force. So just to read this first definition, the Ankh means to live upon something, life. Going to the second entry has life, stability, prosperity, life, all prosperity, all stability, all health, and joy of heart, a formula of good wishes which follows each mention of the king's name in official documents. There's been tons of thinking about what the Ankh means. So on one hand, you can see it as a stylized body with the top loop being the head, the two arms and legs. You've had people who said the Ankh represents a fusion of male and female, with the top loop being the womb and the lower half being a representation of male genitalia. You've had people who looked at it from a perspective of physics and thinking about the way the loop is drawn as a representation of energy currents and a flow of electricity, particularly with that little wavy symbol right next to it. So literally an electric life force, a force where we have loopings of energy, loopings of power that are happening. People have seen in this image a sandal. So if you look at it from above, like a place to put your foot and wrap the loop around. So to symbolize the life path that we walk, how we go through our life journey. So all of these things are, and more, are encoded in this one little symbol. So in many different tableaus, you see all of these images of deities presenting the Ankh or presenting the life force to the main figure of the image. And this we will use as a model for how to work with this particular glyph and the Ankh. Okay, so I would like everybody to get into a meditative state. I will play some music and we're going to do a quick guided meditation that will activate our understanding of the Ujat and the shamanic eye. And if you have headphones, that might even be helpful so that you can hear the music even more clearly. If not, that's totally fine, but I'll give you a minute just to kind of get yourself set up, to get in a comfortable position and ready to close your eyes for this experience that we are about to have. Okay, so let me share my music and we will begin. Imagine yourself in a boat on the Nile River. It is a calm day. The sun is shining on you. The wind is lightly blowing. As you sail down the river, you come to the shore and lightly step out of the boat. You walk towards a cave that is up in the distance, feeling the sand under your feet as you travel. As you get to the entrance of the cave, greet your spiritual guide who is standing there waiting for you and ask if you can enter. You walk into the cave. It is completely black. As your vision comes to you, you see a beautiful being dressed in white in front of you with a moon disk on their head. They have an Ankh in each hand. They are glowing with a white light. This figure holds the Ankh and the white light surrounding the Ankh up to your nose, and you begin to breathe in the breath of life. The white light travels into your nose, energizing your sense of smell. It starts to radiate upwards into your face and head. The light shines in your eyes. You see your eyes sparkle with the white light. The light continues to cover your hair. You feel all of the follicles on your head excited and brimming with energy. The light travels down the back of your head, covers your ears, and your ears start to sparkle. The energy travels down your neck. You feel your neck loosen. The tension is relieved. The white light shines. It comes further down. You feel it start to radiate through your arms, from the top of your shoulders all the way down to the tip of your fingers. The white light is coming down the front of your chest. Your heart center starts to shine as it is touched by the white light that is descending. The white light continues downward, touching all of your organs. Your liver starts to smile, your kidneys, your spleen, your intestines. The light travels down to your waist, energizing your sacrum, your perineum, your sexual center. The light travels down into your thighs, releasing any tension that is there. It travels to your knees, down your legs, and into your feet. You're now covered with the white light. The moon figure hands you the two Ankhs. You now have the power of the life force. Feel the power radiating through your body. Now see before you someone you know who is sick. It might be a friend or a family member. The illness can be of any sort. See that person's face and body standing right in front of you. You hold the Ankh in your right hand up in front of that person to their nose so that they can also breathe the breath of life. You see the white light travel into their nose, starting to illuminate their face, their eyes, their teeth, their tongue, the top of their head, the back of their head. As you hold the Ankh up to them, see the light travel down their neck, down the front of their arms, travel back up the back of the arms, covering the shoulders, the torso, the stomach area. See the light travel down their waist, down their thighs, down their legs and their feet. Say to them, I give you Ankh, the power of life. Now see yourself in a forest that has been devastated by fire. The land has been burnt. Animals are gone. There's a stench in the air. Hold the two Ankhs up that are in your hands and imagine sending a procession of Ankhs from your hand down into the land. Say, land, I send Ankh life into you. Now see yourself at the ocean. An ocean polluted by oil, by plastic, by tons and tons of trash. Feel the devastation of the ocean. Hear the pain of the ocean. Now hold up the Ankhs that are in your hand. See an emanation of Ankhs travel into the ocean. Say, ocean, I send Ankh or the power of life to you. Now fly up into outer space. Look at the earth beneath you. Hear the pain of the earth, the struggle of the earth. hold up the ankhs that are in your hand and project them to the earth and say, Earth, I project Ankh, the power of life, into you. At this point, come back into the cave where we started. See the moon deity in front of you with the crescent on their head and say thank you for this experience. Walk back to the entrance of the cave. See your spirit guide there and say thank you for this experience. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Okay, I'll give people a moment to come back. Okay, all right, so that was the Ujat. That was the shamanic eye that we have been introduced to. And keep in mind, this is what you can do with just one glyph. And again, the archive gives us hundreds and hundreds of these to work and to play with. So would anybody like to share some of their experience and what you saw, what you felt? Go ahead, Patty, please.
Okay, there was one point in there where I started remembering Lion Witch in the wardrobe, and I'm walking along, you know, the lion's walking along and everything's growing up around them. And I could see me doing that and giving life, and that was beautiful. Thank you.
Did anyone else find the meditation useful?
It was interesting to interact with Kansu. Yeah, and I really appreciated you talked about the Ankh as electricity, a representative of that. And so, you know, in our modern technology, we have circuit boards and all that sort of thing, and circuit boards have things like, you know, impedance and whatever going on. And as the electricity passes through us, it's like, what are we doing? Are we slowing it down? Are we speeding it up? You know, as it passes through our body, what are we putting back into the world? It kind of made me think of that.
I like that, absolutely. I like the last phrase that you gave us, Derek. What we put into the world, we get back in return. So we want to be beings who live this life, literally projecting life, not projecting death, not projecting destruction. And when you actively send your mind and your intention to creating and cultivating more life, that life will loop back around, because again, we have the Ankh and we have the loop. So when you send life out, that life that you're sending to others will then loop back around to yourself.
It also makes me wonder, you know, you mentioned the inner child when you talk about the 9 spiritual bodies, and which is something that, you know, Western psychological practice has a kind of a preoccupation with. And, you know, I think the one view is that there's a lot of hurt inner children running around messing things up right now in our current era. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, our whole political system is run by inner children. I mean, just a lot of petulance, petty behavior, tribalistic behavior, behavior that is focusing on me, what can I get for myself? Very low level thinking about revenge, about hurt, about power. And unfortunately, when you have people who have not been initiated, these are the kinds of things that happen. And this is why actually in the ancient Egyptian context, all of the government officials were initiated priests. And it's not necessarily because they were like, oh, well, religion, we need to fuse religion and state, but it was a sense that without the proper honing of your spiritual power, you're not going to be projecting life into the nation, into the people. You're going to be acting out of your own emotional, wild impulses. So yeah, so learning, and you can use this meditation and improv with it in your own way. I mean, when you feel like there are moments where your inner child might be hurting, I mean, you can literally go into the cave, summon your child to come to you, and literally see an Ankh over the child, over yourself as a child. I mean, that's a meditation that I often do. I am on an ocean side, literally I could see myself as a baby being held by a deity figure, literally under the full moon. So when I know something is kind of triggering me, and the things like you can't really be triggered if you identify with your Ba, because the Ba is beyond all emotions or emotional impulses. So if you identify with the higher self, you can know, okay, this is just my inner child talking. This is just my inner child that needs to be healed. I don't have to act in a certain way. I don't have to give the inner child the key to the car, but I can still give the child what the child needs. Okay. Any other feedback or things that people want to share?
I really quickly, I really appreciated and enjoyed when we were breathing in the life of the Ankh and the white, with a lot of meditations that I've done and with like my Reiki practice and whatnot, I've a lot of visualizations and meditations. There's like white light pouring over me and in my energetic field, but I realized rarely do I ever experience the practice of breathing it in. And like giving the mental image and the visceral experience of like it being in my eyes and my teeth and like inside gave a totally different like awakening experience. So I was really appreciative of that.
No, absolutely. That's a great point, Catherine. And when you read the Egyptian texts, I mean, they literally talk about every part of the body being filled with a god. You know, my eyes are Ra, my nose is Anubis, my teeth are this figure, my ears are this figure. I mean, so literally it's being so filled with divine energy that you yourself are transformed from a human into a divine being. All right, and I think that's a good transition to meeting our next spiritual body, which is that highest sense of who we are. We'll do the sequence that I'm calling experiencing your immortality. Okay, so let's see, where did we leave off? Okay, so we did our work with hieroglyphs, and now we are going to experience our immortality. So if we remember, I talked about the Ba as this human-headed bird that symbolizes the deepest core, the immortal self of who we are. Of course, the bird as a symbol of total freedom, being able to fly to the highest heights, etc. And this is a good graphical representation of what this spiritual body is and does. So keep in mind these images as we do another guided meditation. So we'll go do the same thing, kind of go back into the cave, and we can see on the right how the person is literally engaging with the spiritual body, communing with the spiritual body, and we're going to use that as a template to do the same thing. So in this case, for the music that I'll play, it won't be the same thing that we heard the first time. I'm going to use a different chant. And so, as I said before, there are a lot of chants and mantras that are used to activate different ritual practices. So you'll hear the same chant like over and over and over again, but it is to help you get into trance and to help activate the connection with the spiritual body. And so the chant that you'll hear is this collection of sounds and that it goes Oga, Ogo, Ong. And so Ong, you'll hear even just sonically the connection between Ankh and Ong. And for those who know, let's say Vedic chants, the chant Om and Ankh and Ong, they're all kind of sonically similar. So basically this chanting of life is basically helping us to activate our connection to our immortal life. And so that is what we will see in this next meditation. All right, so let's get the music going and I will share the screen again. Okay. Okay. All right, so let's start. So everyone can go ahead and get ready for the meditation. Feel free to go ahead and close your eyes. And you'll hear the chanting sound that will come in immediately, and then I will start talking. Again, focus on this image. Just keep the image that you've seen in your mind of this human-headed bird. See yourself again, sitting in a boat on the Nile River. You lightly place your hand in the water to feel how cool it is as you sail along. The wind is calm. The sun is shining. The boat takes you to the shore. You step out, feel the sand in between your toes, and walk. You see an intricately designed cave in the distance. You walk up to it and see your spiritual guide waiting for you at the entrance. You ask if you may come in. You walk into the cave. It is completely dark. As you start to regain your awareness, you will notice about arm's length above your head is a human-headed bird. It has your head on it. It is completely covered in a disk of light. It is there, silently. It has always been there, observing you, watching, recording all of the choices that you have made over the course of your life. From this white light is an emanation of complete peace. Not only does it have a record of your life, It has a record of all of your previous lives, all of the incarnations before this one. It has followed you to this lifetime. Smile upwards to the bird above your head and say, I want to connect with you. The Ba is the core of your divine spark, your diamond body, the keeper of your androgeneity. Now send gratitude upward to the Ba. Say, I am thankful for the gift of life, for the gift of being able to experience infinity within a finite form. Send gratitude to the Ba because it is the key and the vehicle for your immortality. And for many incarnations, even after this one. Smile again to the Ba over you. Now widen your sphere of awareness and see the shining balls of light over the heads of everyone on this call right now. You'll see a network of shining lights, of shining Ba birds. Send your light from the Ba to the Ba of everyone here. Feel the sense of connection and unity as your light touches every light here. Now receive light from the Bas of all of us here in the room into your Ba. Feel the light that you've sent out now coming back to you. Now feel that light waft over you as a light mist. You might feel some tingling in your neck, down the back of your spine, maybe even in your arms. Let the light of the Ba wash over you. Now see the bird begin to fly away far into the distance until you can no longer see it. It is going to bring you what you need for this stage of your spiritual development and evolution. Now see the Ba bird flying back to you, carrying an Ankh in his feet. As it flies back into position over your head, see the Ba lightly put an Ankh on top of your crown. Absorb it into your body. Now open your heart again. Feel the love that has descended from the Ba, and project your gratitude again back upwards. Now return to the entrance of the cave. See your spiritual guide there waiting for you, and say thank you for this experience. And you may come out and open your eyes when you're ready. Okay. How are we doing? Can I give you a
I thought
moment? I
that
know
was
sometimes it could be a little intense.
that one was intense. That one was intense. I'll speak for myself. It made me wonder, like, what do these spiritual bodies need
Ah, a
to
great
be?
question.
What's the care and feeding and watering? You know what I mean? Like, what do they
No,
need to be
no,
doing?
that's a great question. That's a great question. I mean, because all of them have to be watered. I mean, just like with our body, our physical bodies, we need omega-3s, we need vitamin E, we need vitamin B and C and D. I mean, so we know we need superfoods and fruits and vegetables. I mean, so yes, every body has a diet or a food that they require. So as I mentioned before, the Shahoud, the energy body, actually feeds on light, on starlight in particular, on sacred sounds. The inner child feeds on myths and stories, because that is how the inner child learns to become the hero, you know, of their own story. The Ba, that's an interesting question. One can build altars and shrines to the Ba. One can do meditations where you actually visit the Ba every night before you go to bed, and where you actually see and kind of keep a connection. Yeah, so I think that's a longer question around initiation. But Derek, I think your impulse is spot on. We have to feed these bodies, and we have to feed them constantly so that they can last for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Oh, Patty, thank
Mine
you.
brought
I see Tamar has a hand up.
Hi, loving it. Fantastic. I have a question that will add to Derek's question or statement. And what is so I'm medicinal plants, regenerative agriculture is sort of what Ian and I do. And so we love learning about perspectives from different cultures on illness in the body and spirit. I'm sure you know a bit about other cultures' interpretation. I wonder how they relate to Egyptian thought.
So the question is, how do people
how do they think about physical and emotional illness and
illness? Got it.
Yeah.
No, that's a great question. So first of all, to understand illness, you have to understand which spiritual body is out of alignment. So it's almost the thinking is almost like playing a harp, that you have to have all of the strings that are perfectly aligned for the music to work. And unfortunately, in our current medical system, the focus is very fragmented. I mean, so we have let's say a primary care person that you get, let's say certain pills from for, eye, ears, nose, throat. If you feel like you're having an emotional problem, you go to a therapist and you see that person, but there's no one place where someone can say, here is the state of all of your bodies. Here's the actual body that is experiencing a problem. Because sometimes people think that there are physical issues that are actually not. Because I mean, there are moments where someone might go to a doctor and say, oh, I'm having this pain in my leg. And the doctor might say, okay, I've run this test, I've done, these electrical things to look at your nerves, your muscles, and you're fine. But then it's like, okay, well, maybe the pain is actually not the physical body that's talking, but it might be the energy body, or it might be the mental body. It could be the inner child that's screaming for attention. So having a methodology by which to assess the range of our existence and many different layers of manifestation would be the first step to really having a holistic understanding of what healing and health can actually be. I mean, of course, I think there's more to say there, but I think that's probably my first answer to the question. Yeah, go ahead, Mikhail.
I had a question slash statement. I think it was very intense. I think particularly when we saw the bars of everybody else on the call, and then our bars were all like created this network, almost like this geometric form, where it was like this perfect symmetry between all of us communicating with one another. Reminded me a bit of like the form of the Kabbalistic tree of life, and kind of like all of those different forms and intersections between them all connecting to this larger network. And so then it made me think about and wonder, about what it is to actually consider, whenever we're meeting other people or interacting with other people, are Bas communicating with one another? Are all of these different spirit bodies communicating with other people? And even just when we walk around every day, it's like that level of interaction happening. And that's something that's so beyond like kind of our contemporary understanding of interpersonal interactions. So I guess I wonder if you had any observations slash thoughts about how we interact with one another on these multiple planes simultaneously, and how we nourish that, particularly when we meet new people or even on this call right now. Yeah.
No, that's a great question. So many things to say. So on one hand, what we think of as coincidence or synchronicity is really not that at all. I mean, so often when you're able to really communicate with the Ba, you can actually ask the Ba for things that you need in life. And then the Ba, and that's actually how it works. I mean, the Ba will kind of communicate almost telepathically with the Bas of all other people and almost send out a tendril of energy to bring that person or that event or that thing to you. So what you might think of as, oh, this was just a coincidence that I met this person that ended up opening this door for me and changing my life in this way, could actually be the tendrils of energy coming from the Bas that are connected to all of us, pulling them and attracting them to you. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, this system and understanding the 9 bodies gives us a much more robust understanding of not just ourselves and how we move through the world, but how deeply interactive and interpenetrating we are with other people and other things and other places. And I think being aware of the 9 bodies gives you a hyper awareness that you can take with you as you move through life, of being hyper attentive to the world, to how we exist, and to things that are happening almost behind the veil, if that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, and many things are always happening. I mean, we're talking face to face, but there are many other things that are happening that we might not be able to perceive with our physical senses, and other kinds of energetic reactions and inner penetrations on different levels of existence. Absolutely. So I see someone else.
Yeah, I have a kind of a question. I don't know what you can do with it, but you know, we live in a time where there are sort of dominant belief systems, let's say, and at the same time, we also live in a place where, I mean, Native American spirits are all over the place. There are gods that essentially have been vanquished and going underground, and you could say even dead. So, you're presenting us with a sort of a cosmology, an ancient cosmology, which, yes, it's endured over time. But I'm just wondering as to what your thoughts are as to the introduction of, or the reintroduction of all these ancient systems into our current system, and maybe what that means. And I don't know if you have an answer, but that's kind of something I've been thinking about as we've been doing all this.
Well, yeah, I think it's going to be necessary to reincorporate these understandings into our everyday life. I mean, so we're at a point now where the life sustaining capability of the planet itself is at risk. Whether it's nuclear war between Ukraine, Russia, and the West, all kinds of climate destruction, environmental destruction, etc. So we have to understand, one, a broader sense of who we are, how we're all connected to each other, how we're connected to this world, and really move beyond our myopia to say, okay, I can continue to live this isolated, individualistic experience. I mean, that's why I started or had this piece of healing in the first meditation, where we could say, like, let's actually participate in healing the earth. The earth itself needs our healing. And I know sometimes we can get frustrated by saying, oh, well, I don't have a multi-million-dollar nonprofit that's fighting, climate change, or I'm not out on the front line, fighting for these particular rights or fighting against these particular companies. And I think all of that's important. I think we need to do that. But even before you do that, it takes no time it takes no great effort to say, I'm going to just send life into the earth. I'm going to send life into the world around me. And even that energetic intention can start to shift and move and change things. So I would say, Angelo, just based on the trajectory that we're on, that we have to incorporate these sciences, these spiritual wisdoms, or else our time on this planet as a species, just could very well come to an end. And one thing, go ahead, Patty. I think you're muted.
Yeah, you're on mute.
Patty?
Oh.
Patty, you're muted.
Okay, I just wonder, isn't that a part of the imagination being real? Like we imagine a real world or a better world, and it becomes real, or it is real. And, that's all of the earth that needs healing. We see it and we give it our ankhs, and, and it happens. And I pray for that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really about the power of the mind to emanate into the world and really restore those connections and those divine harmonies. One piece that I also did. Oh, go ahead, Derek.
Just really quick, can you talk to us a little bit about the significance of color, if there is? Because I noticed for the Ba, there is a repetition of blue and green in the representations. Is that intentional by the folks that were doing those representations?
That's actually a really good question. That's a very complex question. Every deity system has a way of charting energy. So like I was saying before, so the Shahoud as an energy body is responsive to light, to starlight, and all these kinds of things. Every light is an energy. And in these spiritual systems, the idea was that you would use this visible spectrum of light and catalog its different effects. And so by associating each color with a deity, that was a scientific way of saying, here's what impact this particular color has. So for instance, let's say a figure like Het-Heru was associated, who's like a deity of love, sexuality, imagination. was thought of as this kind of combination of yellow and green. A figure like, let's say, Mahus, who's this lion-headed deity of war, was associated with red and orange. But it's a complicated question because as Egypt existed over the 3,000 plus years, there were subtle changes in which colors were associated with certain deities. And when the system kind of developed in other parts of the continent, there were shifts between what colors were associated with different energetic forces. So like, let's say, for instance, in the Yoruba tradition, a figure like Ogun, who's a figure of like war, industry, metal, iron, things like that, was associated with a green color. And so it's odd thinking about green as a color of war. So I would say, I guess I say all that to say, you kind of have to follow the specific color assignments in your particular deity system that you're working with, because it can shift so much over time. And I think this is also an area where there's still a lot of space for new work to be done, because there's a lot of color science that has come out recently, spectrographs that have even, or chromatographs that have even kind of started to think about colors of different planets and different kind of energy and sounds that are emerging from different planets and celestial bodies. So I actually think the science of color in relationship to the deities, I think there's still a lot more to explore on that question. Yeah, so I guess one final thing that I'll say before I turn it back over to Angelo, one, I just wanted to give some context for why a cave, because there's tons of different kinds of meditations one can do. There are different ways to activate the Egyptian system, but I chose the cave for a couple of different reasons. One, because the cave itself is one of the primal spaces, spiritual spaces of humanity, our Homo sapiens species. So we can think about, let's say, 200,000 years ago, where we had our early human ancestors who would literally try to return to the origin, return to the primal source, return to the darkness, the blackness, by going into caves and drawing all of these wonderful tableaus on the walls, performing their rituals literally in the heart of the earth. So there's something important and primal about the cave experience that helps us to understand our descent and our return to our origins. And also ancient Egypt, when they were constructing the foundations of their spiritual practice, wanted to reproduce and keep that primal feeling and that primal scene embedded into their practice. So if you think about the pyramids, when you go into the side of the pyramids, you actually can go into a tunnel and go down into the earth. And that's where the sarcophagus would be. And that's where the kinds of rituals in the pyramid would happen. So that descent into the earth is also a replaying of going down into these primal caves. So through our imagination, we can tap into that source and literally put ourselves in the unconscious, but also in the space of all of the millions of years even of hominid ancestors that have come before us to get us to this point. So yes, I wanted you all to experience that kind of primal power and origins by using the cave as the mechanism through which to do these rituals today.
Okay, before we go to Angelo, there's one more question from Fabulous that I want to ask.
Okay.
And he says, is there a kind of relation with the rebirth process in Spanish, which I'm assuming it's maybe Cuban Santeria reincarnation, and Egyptian?
Ooh, okay. That is another deep and big question. I'm not sure if we can answer it fully in these next couple of minutes, but I would say broadly speaking, yes. There's an idea that one continues to be reborn and reincarnate until the whole world has been fully enlightened. And you find that in the Yoruba tradition where one has to work with and cultivate one specific DNA or one specific cultural lineage, because one will keep reincarnating into that lineage with the idea of bringing to its fullest expression the gifts and the spiritual talents that are embedded in that particular lineage. And so the idea is that we have to cultivate all of these spiritual bodies. And when one cultivates them properly, particularly by storing memories of like the good choices, the responsible choices, the responsible things that one has done into the Ba, one can actually start to see that record and come into a new life with the memory of the previous lives that have come before. And so that being one of the goals of the reincarnation and the spiritual process. Yeah. Well, and I guess I should also say, as a final note, this is my first time leading these meditations over Zoom. And I think this was a very powerful experience for me to be able to lead the session in this way. And I thank Angelo for this opportunity. And I will say too, in person, when you're doing in-person rituals, I think that also brings another dimension into everything as well, because then you can add the stones, the smells, the sounds, and really have a different kind of embodied experience. And so I hope that we all can keep in touch. I mean, please feel free to follow me. My website is Marques Redd, MarquesRedd.com. I am also doing other kinds of workshops. I mean, next weekend, I'll be at Esalen for a 3-day workshop called Harnessing the Power of Creation Through African Ritual. And I'll be offering some additional in-person workshops next year as well. So you can also find me on Instagram, Marques.Redd. So feel free to reach out, send me a message. And if you have any other questions, let's definitely stay in touch as well.
Yeah, I'm a little speechless. I guess what I'm thinking is, for myself, this is a very interesting introduction to maybe a new way of looking at it, which has correspondences and everything. It's unique, but it's universal at the same time. And I guess I'm thankful that there's a recording, so I can maybe try some of these things on my own and see where that leads. I wanted to just let you all know that we do this every month. We have one coming up with a woman who's an expert on sleep and restoration from a very holistic point of view on November 19th. And also on November 1st, we're going to do our second iteration of what we call the Sacred Inclusion Challenge, which is a way to think about inclusion. So anyway, Ian, did you have something that you wanted to add?
I do. First of all, thank you so much, Marques. This was really an incredible experience. Like you said, speechless is definitely, I feel like there's so much going on. But I do want to also thank everyone for joining us. I think, this doesn't happen without you. And this is a wonderful community that I'm blessed to be a part of. And I just want to quickly say that we are the Sacred Inclusion Network. We have also a few different avenues that we like to engage with our community. One being the network that I just put on the chat. If you'd like to join that, this is a place to further the discussion. Right now, we're talking about ancestors, and we will send you a follow-up link with Marcus's info, with his movie that he made that we haven't talked about. That would be really cool to watch. Like Angelo said, we do more explorations, and we have a tight-knit mastermind group, which people are available to join, where every 2 weeks we discuss whatever topics are on our specific parts. Everyone is in the spotlight. And we're also starting an accountability challenge where we have accountability buddies that we like to we can pair people up to help on our journeys of unlocking whatever it is we want in our lives. So again, thank you so much, Marques. Like, I'm gonna just say it, this is my favorite one. I look forward to, I'll reach out in the future. And if you'd like, sign up to our group. It's in the chat, and we'll send you an email. And have a great afternoon.
Thanks again, Marques. This has been wonderful.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.